It was a cold, gray morning when Frodo stepped off the muddy path and found himself staring into the still, black waters of the Dead Marshes. A faint mist curled above the surface, clinging to his skin like sweat that didn't come from heat, but from something else, something older, something wrong. Sam was just behind him, boots sinking with every step, struggling to keep up and still protect Frodo at the same time. And Gollum, hunched and muttering, slithered over the stones like he'd known these waters his whole life. Maybe he had. "Don't follow the lights," Gollum hissed through cracked lips. "Trixie, false lights, they wants you to follow. Yes, and you'll never come back. Precious, never come back." Frodo didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on something moving just beneath the surface. It wasn't a fish. It wasn't a log. It was a face.
Pale.
Eyes wide open. Long hair floating like seaweed. Elvish. Beautiful, even in death. And then, slowly, the eyes turned toward him. He stumbled back, heart pounding. Sam rushed forward, grabbing his arm. "Mr. Frodo? What is it? What did you see?" Frodo didn't answer. Because how do you explain that the dead are not just lying beneath the water, but watching, waiting? The air smelled like rot and forgotten battles. Every step they took, something seemed to echo, ghostly whispers caught in the reeds, long-lost cries muffled by the mud. And still, the lights flickered, soft and gold, luring, like gentle fireflies in the dark. But they weren't fireflies. They were lies. Gollum crawled along a ridge, sniffing at the air like an animal sensing something worse than predators. They died here, yes they did.
Men, elves, orcs, all.
Long ago. Long before you, before us, but they don't sleep. No, not here. Sam shivered. But why do they look alive? "They remembers," Gollum said, his voice almost sad. "They remembers the pain, the fear. It keeps them." Frodo's gaze drifted again to the waters. The face was gone now, but something darker lingered, an ache, a sadness he couldn't name. He thought of the elves. So noble, so strong. And now reduced to this? Floating, lifeless, beneath cursed water, faces frozen in the moment of their dying. What happened here? He remembered Gandalf's words. This was once the site of a great battle. Long ago, before even your grandfather's grandfather was born. The Battle of Dagorlad. Thousands had fallen. The last alliance of elves and men had fought side by side, and the cost had been great. Frodo looked around and realized something horrifying. They were walking on a graveyard. No, worse than that. A battlefield that never ended. Because here, the dead didn't rest. Then suddenly, a low splash broke the silence. Sam spun around. Frodo reached for the ring beneath his shirt, heart thudding. And Gollum froze, eyes wide as if he'd seen a ghost. But it wasn't a ghost. It was something else. Behind them, the marsh was moving. And from the mist, a figure began to rise. Not from the path. Not from the mud. But from the water. Frodo took a step back. The figure wasn't rotten, like a corpse. It was glowing. An elf. Tall, fair, with long silver hair that floated even without wind. Eyes closed. Armor torn. A spear still lodged in his chest. And yet he stood. The air went still. Even the lights stopped flickering. Gollum backed away, trembling. No, no, no. We must go. Mustn't look. No more looking, precious. But Frodo couldn't move. The elf was not looking at him. He was looking past him, into the distance, like he was still waiting for a battle that had already ended. Or perhaps for something that was still coming. Then his eyes opened. And Frodo finally understood. The dead were not only trapped in the marshes. They were watching for someone. Someone who hadn't arrived yet. Or someone who would. But who? Frodo clutched the ring tighter. The elf's gaze locked with his, full of sorrow, full of warning. And then he spoke. Only 3 words. Not in the common tongue. Not even in Elvish. Words Frodo had never heard, but somehow felt deep inside. He didn't know their meaning. But he knew Everything had changed. And behind him, Gollum whispered, "They knows. They sees. They waits." Frodo turned, but the elf was gone. The water rippled where he'd stood, like nothing had ever been there. But Sam had seen it too. His face was pale, hands shaking. "We need to get out of here, Mr. Frodo."
Now.
But Frodo wasn't sure anymore. Because for the first time since they'd left the Shire, he felt like maybe they weren't going toward Mordor. Maybe they were being led by the very souls that died trying to stop the darkness the first time. And they were trying to say something. But what? And why only now? And just as Frodo opened his mouth to speak, a scream, cut short and wet, pierced the fog behind them. Someone or something else had entered the marsh. And it wasn't there to help. It was looking for Frodo. And it was no longer behind them. It was watching from below. Frodo didn't move. He couldn't. His feet were rooted in the cold, damp ground, as if the marsh itself didn't want to let him go. The scream still echoed somewhere in the distance, swallowed by the mist, but it felt closer than it should have been. Sam's hand tightened around his arm, but Frodo barely noticed. His eyes were still on the place where the elf had vanished beneath the water. The ripples had gone still again, yet something in Frodo's chest wouldn't settle. Something wasn't right. They weren't alone out here. And it wasn't just the dead. Gollum was muttering faster now, his bony fingers twitching like he was trying to peel off the fear crawling up his own skin. Not safe, not safe, no, no. The lights lies, the voices lies, the dead wants company, precious. We must go, we must go. Sam turned sharply. What was that scream? Was it someone else? A traveler? Gollum shook his head violently. No travelers. Only us. Just us and the bones. Maybe they woke something. Maybe the elf spirit angry, yes, maybe angry at us. Frodo turned to Gollum. What did he say to me? Those words. I didn't understand them, but I felt like I did. Gollum hissed and crouched low, his whole body tight. No words. No words from them. If they speak, you mustn't listen. The dead speaks in riddles and poison. But Frodo wasn't so sure. There had been sorrow in that voice. A warning. And something else, recognition. Like the elf knew him. Or at least knew what he carried. His hand brushed over the ring again beneath his shirt. The metal felt heavier. Warmer. Sam glanced at Frodo and saw the change in his expression. Don't start thinking about it, Mr. Frodo. Don't let it pull at you again. You saw what that thing in the water did. This place ain't right. Frodo nodded slowly, but inside, the pull of the ring was stronger than before. It had responded to the elf, almost like it feared him, or remembered him. The fog was getting thicker. The path ahead twisted into shadows, and the marsh on either side bubbled softly, like it was breathing. The dead didn't rise again, but their presence was everywhere. Under the water, in the reeds, in the silence between each footstep. Gollum scurried ahead. Follow us, follow quick. The bad thing's awake. We smell it. It watches. It hates the light. It hates us. Frodo followed, but his mind was still back with the elf's eyes, glowing with pain and memory. He remembered stories Bilbo told him as a child about the great battle long ago, when elves and men fought against the Dark Lord before Sauron, back when hope still had a chance. This marsh, these waters, they were the final resting place of those who gave everything. And now their peace was broken. They walked for what felt like hours. The sun above was only a pale blur behind clouds, casting no warmth and no comfort. Frodo's feet were soaked and heavy. Sam stayed close, holding a rusted sword tight, eyes darting. Gollum kept mumbling to himself, twitching and snarling at every shifting shadow. Then suddenly, Gollum stopped. Frodo nearly bumped into him. Why you stopped? Gollum's head turned slowly, his eyes locked on something in the reeds. There, he whispered. Look. At first, Frodo saw nothing. Just gray fog and darker water. Then he saw it. A figure, sitting by the edge of the water. Motionless. Cloaked. Hood pulled low. Pale hands resting on its knees. It looked like a statue. Or a ghost. It didn't breathe. It didn't move. It just sat there as if waiting. Frodo's mouth went dry. Is that alive? Sam whispered. Looks like a man. Could be hurt. But Gollum backed away. No man. Not anymore. That's not what it seems, no. The figure lifted its head slightly, and Frodo saw its eyes. They weren't empty, like the other dead. They were aware. And ancient. The figure rose slowly, cloak dragging across the wet ground. Frodo took a step back, every muscle in his body urging him to run, but his curiosity overpowered his fear. Something about the figure felt different than the dead they'd seen before. Not bound to the marsh. Not drowned or trapped. This one had chosen to remain.
Who are you?
Frodo called out, unsure if the figure would understand. Why are you here? The figure tilted its head, studying Frodo, then spoke in a voice that was dry and cold but strangely familiar. You carry it. Frodo's hand curled around the ring again. You've come far, the figure said. Too far for one so small. Yet not far enough. Sam stepped forward protectively.
Who are you?
What do you want from him? The figure ignored Sam. Its gaze never left Frodo. He showed himself to you, it said. The first of the fallen. He was once a captain among the Eldar. He died with hope in his heart. That hope died with him. Frodo felt his stomach tighten. Then why did he rise? Why now? The figure's eyes darkened. Because the wound reopens. The evil that once spread across these lands is rising again. And those who died fighting it they remember. Frodo swallowed hard. Remember what? The figure stepped closer. The price. And the failure. The ring returns. And so do the shadows. Gollum whimpered and covered his ears.
No.
No more words, no more ghosts, we must go. But Frodo stood his ground. Why are you still here? Why not rest like the others? The figure's expression didn't change. I am not allowed to rest. I chose to wait. Until it came back. Until you came. Frodo's breath caught. Sam grabbed his arm. We have to go, Mr. Frodo. We're wasting time. The figure raised a hand, palm facing upward. You seek to destroy it. Yet you do not understand what you carry. The ring does not fear death. It wears it like armor. Only those who've seen what it cost can break its will. Frodo felt the ring grow colder against his chest, as if it sensed the truth in the words. The figure turned slowly and pointed deeper into the fog. There is one who remembers more than most. One who fell, but did not fade. If you wish to know what lies ahead, find him. Frodo hesitated. Where? The figure said nothing more. It stepped backward into the water and began to sink, not struggling, not drowning, just fading beneath the surface like smoke in the rain. Within seconds, it was gone. Silence returned. Only their breathing remained. Gollum's face was pale with fear. He speaks of the Forgotten One. The one who sleeps with eyes open. We mustn't go there. We can't go there. Frodo turned to Sam. But we have to. If there's a chance he knows something, anything, we need to try. Sam looked at him, torn between fear and loyalty. If we go deeper into these marshes, Mr. Frodo, we might not come back out. Frodo stared into the fog, heart pounding. I know. And he stepped forward, not knowing what lay ahead, only that someone or something was waiting for him. The fog grew thicker as they pressed on, swallowing shapes and muffling every sound. Even Gollum's sloshing steps faded under the silence. Frodo kept walking, guided by something deeper than reason, some pull in his chest, like the ring itself was leading him, or maybe the warning from that ghostly figure still echoed too loudly to ignore. Sam stayed close, more tense than ever. Every time a branch cracked or a distant splash echoed, his hand shot to his sword. But what use was a blade here? Against things that couldn't bleed? Frodo's mind spun with questions. Why now? Why had that elf appeared? Why speak to him and not Gollum or Sam? And who is this Forgotten One they were supposed to find? The dead were restless, yes, but not mindless. There was purpose behind what they'd seen. A message, trapped in centuries of silence. They moved deeper into the marsh, where the water turned darker, the land narrower. Strange shapes hovered beneath the surface. Shields, bones, twisted weapons frozen mid-battle. Sometimes faces would float into view, never rising fully, just drifting close enough to haunt, then disappearing back into the depths. Sam avoided looking down. Gollum refused to speak now, eyes darting everywhere, hunched low, crawling like a frightened dog. Then came the change. The light. It wasn't the trickster glow of the dead lights that tried to lure travelers off the path. This was something colder, dimmer, blue-white, pulsing faintly like breath through a dying flame. And it was moving. Not fast. Not toward them. Just pacing. Frodo froze. He couldn't see the figure clearly, but he felt it. Something in the way the fog bent around it. Not like the others. Not drowned. Not trapped.
Alive.
Or something like it. Sam whispered. Do you see that? There, to the right. Frodo nodded slowly. It's not one of the dead. It's watching. They crouched low as the shape circled in and out of the mist, vanishing and reappearing like it knew the land better than they ever could. Gollum finally broke his silence. Not a ghost. Not dead. But not living either. He waits, he watches. He knows the ring. Knew it once. Frodo turned sharply. You've seen him before? Gollum's face twisted with something between shame and terror. Long ago. In another time. Before we found the ring again. He was broken, but he remembered. He said names no one should know. Things even Sauron forgot. Sam frowned. Why didn't you tell us this before? Because he's worse than dead, Gollum spat. Worse than orcs. Worse than ringwraiths. He remembers what it was like before the darkness. Before the war. Before failure. That word echoed in Frodo's mind. Failure. Hadn't it been haunting him since the Shire? No matter how far he walked, or how long he resisted the pull of the ring, some part of him always feared he'd be the one to lose. To give in.
To fail.
Maybe that's what this forgotten one was. A mirror. The figure stepped forward now, not hiding anymore. The shape of a man, tall, cloaked in torn armor that shimmered faintly under layers of grime and rot. His face was hidden, but Frodo could sense him watching. Not with hatred, but sadness. Like seeing an old friend doomed to repeat the same mistake. You carry it, the figure said softly. As I once did. Frodo's chest tightened. Sam stepped between them. Stay back. Don't come closer. But the figure didn't move. He just tilted his head, as if observing Frodo from another life. I remember what it did to me. I remember the promise it made. The voice so kind. So convincing. It told me I would save my people. I would defeat evil. But I became what I hated. Frodo stepped forward despite Sam's protests. Who are you? The figure turned slightly, revealing a glimpse of golden hair beneath his hood. My name doesn't matter anymore. Not in this age. I was one of Gil-galad's warriors. I held the ring for a moment. Long enough. Too long. Frodo's heart pounded. He remembered the stories from Rivendell. There had been many lesser rings, many unknown bearers, some who fell long before Sauron rose to power again. Maybe this was one of them. Someone who'd touched power and paid the price. You said you once carried it, Frodo asked, voice trembling. What happened? The figure's hands curled into fists. I tried to destroy it. I couldn't. I couldn't even let go. A heavy silence fell. Then how did you lose it? I didn't, he said. It was taken from me by the marsh. Frodo took another step. What do you want from me? The figure paused. I want nothing. But the ring, it wants everything. And it's already reaching through you. Frodo backed away slightly, swallowing hard. The ring had grown colder again. Heavy like iron. The weight of failure clung to it. Sam whispered, This is a trap, Frodo. Let's go. We don't owe him anything. But Frodo looked at the figure again and saw not a ghost, not a spirit, but a warning. A future he feared. Do you know how to fight it? Frodo asked. The figure turned toward the deeper part of the marsh. There's no fighting it, only outlasting it. But few do. One of them still tries. Frodo narrowed his eyes. Who? The figure didn't answer. He simply walked into the fog, vanishing like the others. Not sinking. Just gone. Gollum whimpered again, crouching lower. Now you see. They're everywhere. Watching. Waiting. You think you're alone, precious, but you're not. The ring has been here before, and it's always come back. Frodo looked at the black water, feeling the weight of 100 unseen eyes beneath the surface. Not all of them were enemies. Some were witnesses. Some, maybe even regrets. But the truth was settling in like the mist around them. This wasn't just a journey to Mordor. It was a path walked before. A path marked by ghosts, by failure, by good intentions turned to ash. And somehow, they were all watching him, waiting to see if he would do what they could not. But now, another shape moved in the fog. And this one wasn't kind. The water stirred violently, and a new scream split the silence. Sharp, raw, human. Not a ghost. Someone was out there.
Alive.
And in pain. The scream cut through the fog like a knife. Frodo froze, his heart jumping into his throat. It sounded close, too close, like someone just ahead had been swallowed by the marsh itself. The sound echoed for a second longer, then vanished, swallowed by the silence. The water rippled again, unnaturally, as if something had just slipped back beneath it. Sam moved forward instinctively, sword drawn, voice sharp but shaking. Hello? Is someone out there? Say something. But no one answered. Gollum hissed, slinking back into the shadows.
Foolish.
So foolish. The marsh takes, it doesn't give. That scream, it's bait now. They want you to go looking. They want you to feel something. Frodo swallowed hard, but the sound of that voice, whoever it belonged to, still rang in his ears. It wasn't a ghost's cry. There'd been real pain in it. Real fear. The kind that didn't come from memory, but from the now. From something alive. He turned to Sam. Someone could still be out there. We have to at least try. Sam looked torn, but nodded. We don't walk away from people in trouble. Together they pushed ahead, stepping carefully over mossy stones and half-sunken roots. The mist seemed thicker now, curling around their legs, blinding them to anything more than a few feet ahead. The water beside them shifted like it was breathing. Shapes moved beneath it. Some were bodies, some maybe just illusions. But it didn't matter. The line between real and memory no longer existed in this place. Then, another sound. A cough. It came from up ahead, a ragged, desperate gasp like someone trying to cling to the last threads of consciousness. Frodo hurried forward, and as the fog thinned just enough, he saw a figure slumped on the edge of a rock. A young man, maybe not much older than Frodo himself. His skin was pale, streaked with mud and blood. His eyes fluttered open at the sound of footsteps, but there was no recognition in them. Only fear. Frodo knelt beside him. It's okay, we're not here to hurt you. The man coughed again. Don't follow them. The lights. The lights lie. Sam dropped to his other side.
Who are you?
What happened? I don't know. I was traveling south. Thought I could cut through the marshes, save time. He gasped again, gripping Frodo's arm. There was a face that knew my name. I never told it. Frodo's blood ran cold. The man's eyes rolled back for a moment, then focused again. It looked like my brother. But he died years ago. I buried him myself. But he stood there, in the water, calling to me. Sam looked shaken.
He's not just lost.
He's seen something worse than the dead. Frodo turned to Gollum, who stayed well away, muttering to himself. Can we move him? Sam asked. We can try, Frodo said, slipping his arms under the man's shoulders. But as soon as they lifted him, the water around them rippled violently. Then came the whispering. Not from ahead. Not from behind. Below. Dozens of voices rising in unison. Some soft, some sharp, all broken and sad. Words in Elvish, in the black speech, in the common tongue. Some pleaded. Others warned. Some simply wept. Frodo staggered as the man suddenly screamed again, louder this time, eyes wide with terror. They're pulling me. They don't want me to leave. His body convulsed. His hands clawed at Frodo's shirt like an anchor. Then the lights returned. Not soft glows anymore, but bright, angry flares, gold, green, blue, circling them, dancing through the fog like fire spirits. The marsh groaned beneath them, bubbling like something massive was stirring far below. Sam raised his sword, swiping wildly at the lights. Get back. Get away from us. The man let out one last desperate cry, and then the light closest to him pulsed. His body went stiff and went still. Frodo stared in horror. The man's face slackened, his breath gone. Just like that, whatever had taken him finished the job. And then the lights began to move again, toward Frodo. He backed away, holding the ring under his shirt with both hands. The closer the lights came, the heavier it grew. It burned now, not just against his chest, but in his mind, whispering louder, clearer. Asterisk, give in. Let go. They'll stop if you just let go. Asterisk. Frodo fell to his knees, gripping the chain tight. No, I won't. You won't have me. From behind, Gollum's voice snarled. It calls to them. The ring. It calls them. It wants you afraid. It wants you alone. Frodo shook his head. But why the dead? Why show us their faces? Why pretend to be people we knew? They aren't pretending, Gollum whispered, now closer, almost behind Frodo. The ring twists them, shows them who they were, or who you want them to be. Sam helped Frodo to his feet, both of them panting, surrounded now by dozens of floating lights that circled like hungry eyes. What do we do? Frodo looked ahead. The path had almost disappeared, but somewhere in that mist the Forgotten One still waited. He could feel it, a presence like iron in his bones. He'd gotten too close to turn back now. We go forward, Frodo said. Sam hesitated. Even if it's a trap? Frodo didn't answer. His hand brushed the ring again. And just then, everything around them changed. The lights vanished, snuffed out in an instant. The water went still. The fog parted just enough. And from the shadows ahead, something enormous moved. Not fast. Not loud. But slow. Deliberate. It rose from the marsh like a mountain breaking the surface of the sea. Armor fused to bone. A crown twisted by fire. And a face that flickered with ancient memory. But it wasn't a wraith. It wasn't a ghost. It was something that never should have existed outside the First Age. And it was waiting for Frodo. Frodo's breath caught in his chest as the massive figure moved through the marsh like it had always belonged to it. The ground seemed to tremble under its presence, even though its steps made no sound. Every instinct pulled him to run, to turn and flee into the fog and forget everything he'd seen. But his feet didn't move. Sam stood frozen beside him, his sword lowered slightly, eyes wide in disbelief. Even Gollum, who always seemed to know more than he said, dropped to the ground and whispered a name Frodo didn't recognize, something in the old tongue, something almost forgotten. The figure kept approaching until its shape was clearer. A tall being, but not fully human. What was once flesh had been wrapped in armor, but the armor had grown into the skin, merged with the body like it had been worn so long that time itself gave up. The crown wasn't gold. It was black, like scorched stone, jagged and misshapen. From beneath it, two faint lights burned in empty eye sockets. They weren't red like Sauron's, not that piercing flame. This was colder, like a memory that refused to die. Then, in a voice that was both deep and distant, the being spoke. I was the first. Frodo couldn't speak. The being continued, stepping slowly onto dry ground, his armor shedding droplets of black water. Before the Nine, before the Wraiths, before Isildur's fall, I wore a ring. Frodo's heart pounded. He'd heard of the Nine, men corrupted by Sauron, turned into Nazgul. But this was different. Older. Forgotten by history. Or hidden. You had a ring? Frodo finally whispered. I still do. With one hand, the figure raised his arm, and on a finger long decayed, yet bound by steel, sat a ring. But not the one. This ring was silver, cracked, barely holding together. Yet Frodo felt the pulse of power from it as if it cried out to the ring he carried. Sam stepped between them. "What do you want from him?" The figure's eyes shifted slightly. "Not from him. I want through him." Frodo's mind raced. "You were corrupted? Like the others?" The figure laughed, but it was joyless, hollow.
No.
"I chose it. I believed in the promise Sauron made. Not to rule, but to rebuild. He wasn't always darkness. Once he offered peace. Order. I accepted the ring willingly. I thought I could control it. And for a time, I did." Frodo stepped back. The ring around his neck was burning now, like it knew something dangerous had awakened. The light in the Dead Marshes began to flicker again, slowly gathering behind the figure, like an army of watching souls. Gollum hissed from the shadows.
He never died.
"He never left. He hides. Even the Nazgul fears him. The betrayer, they called him. The one who turned and then refused to come back." Frodo's voice shook. "Why stay here? Why the marshes?" The figure's head tilted slightly. "Because the dead remember. They whisper things the living forget. And they showed me something, a vision. The ring would return. And with it, a choice." Sam narrowed his eyes. "A choice for what?" The figure looked directly at Frodo. "To end it. Or begin again." The marsh stirred behind them. The fog thickened. Lights blinked like stars falling into the water. The air turned heavier. Then Frodo felt something shift inside him. A pull. Not just from the ring, but from the other ring. The one the figure held. It wasn't speaking, but it was calling. Reaching. The two rings recognized each other, connected by something deeper than time. And then came the twist. The betrayer took a slow step forward. "You are not the first halfling to come through this place." Frodo blinked.
What?
"A century ago. Maybe more. He came alone.
Lost.
Carrying nothing, but looking for something." Sam looked confused. "Another hobbit? That's not possible." "He never left," the betrayer said. He turned slightly and pointed toward a distant part of the marsh, where the fog pulsed like breath. "Follow the dead paths. You'll find what remains." Frodo stared, confused and suddenly afraid. Why would a hobbit come here? The figure said nothing. But Frodo already knew the answer. Because the ring had been found once before. By Gollum. And maybe, just maybe, Gollum hadn't found it by accident. His journey through the mountains, his years in the dark. What if he had met this betrayer before? What if someone else had brought him there? Gollum's eyes were wide now, his teeth clenching in panic.
No.
No, no, no. Lies. He lies, precious. Tricksy betrayer. But Frodo looked at Gollum, really looked, and saw something worse than fear. Recognition. The kind of fear that only comes when a memory is being dragged back into the light. "What is he talking about?" Frodo demanded. But Gollum backed away, muttering, "He told us things. Promises. He said the ring would come back. He said it would call, and it did. Yes, it did, precious." Sam spun toward him. "You knew this thing was here?" Gollum shrieked and dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "We forgot. We tried to forget. He showed us the fire, the water, the faces. We ran, we ran." Frodo turned back toward the betrayer, hands shaking. "What did you do to him?" The figure didn't answer. He just raised his other hand, and from the depths of the marsh, the water parted. A platform of stone rose slowly, ancient and broken, and on it a body,
Small.
curled in on itself, clothed in rags, but unmistakably hobbit-like. Time had nearly erased its features, but not the shape, not the size. Frodo felt the world tilt. Sam gasped. "Is that?" But Frodo already knew. That wasn't Gollum. It was someone else. Another hobbit. One who'd come here long before him. And never left. The marsh groaned again, louder now, like the weight of truth was too much even for the land to bear. The betrayer looked to Frodo once more. "It was never just about you. The ring has chosen before. It will choose again. But now / it wants to finish." And the dead began to rise. Frodo's heart hammered as the dead rose from the marsh. Not just one or two, but dozens. Elves in shattered armor. Men twisted in pain. Orcs long decayed. Their eyes glowed faintly, not red with rage, but blue with something worse. Memory. They didn't lunge. They didn't scream. They stood silently, shoulder to shoulder in the water, staring at Frodo. Waiting. Sam moved in front of him. "We've come too far, Mr. Frodo. We have to get out of here.
Now."
But Frodo couldn't move. His eyes were locked on the stone platform, on the lifeless hobbit curled atop it. The face was worn by time, but something about it was familiar, not in appearance, but in feeling. Like a thread that tied Frodo's journey to someone else's, long before him. And the ring around his neck felt heavier than ever, burning cold against his chest. Gollum whimpered behind them. "He told us to leave it. We didn't listen. We never listen." The betrayer stepped closer. "The ring has tried many hands. Yours is only the latest. That one," he pointed at the body, "was its last mistake. He resisted, but he didn't have what you have." Frodo looked up. "What do I have?" The betrayer paused, then said simply, "Witnesses." Frodo blinked, confused. Then he felt it, a sudden stillness in the marsh. The dead weren't rising to attack. They weren't here for vengeance. They were watching him, watching what he would do, what he would choose. The ring pulsed again, its voice louder in his thoughts than ever. Asterisk, they failed. You can finish what they started. You can end it all. Asterisk. Frodo sank to his knees, the pressure unbearable. The water around the platform rippled, and the image of the dead hobbit flickered. For a moment, he saw his own reflection in the body's place. Sam gripped Frodo's shoulders. "Don't listen to it. That's not you. That'll never be you." Frodo shut his eyes. The betrayer was still there, looming, silent, waiting. And then suddenly Frodo understood. The ring wasn't just corrupting the living, it had tied itself to the dead. It had created echoes, shadows of the past. This wasn't about one journey. This was about all the journeys, all the failures, all the choices made out of fear, greed, or pride. The ring had planted seeds in every age. And now, it wanted Frodo to make the same mistake. He opened his eyes and took off the ring. The cold left him instantly. The fog didn't vanish, but it thinned. The faces of the dead looked softer, their eyes dimming like stars before dawn. The platform began to sink back into the water, the long-lost hobbit's body slowly disappearing beneath the surface. The betrayer took a step back. "You refused it." Frodo stood. "I didn't come here to finish what others started. I came to end it." But the betrayer's expression didn't shift. "Then give it to me." Sam stepped forward, sword raised. "You're not getting near him." But Frodo didn't flinch. He looked the betrayer in the eye. "You had your chance. And you stayed here, hiding in a graveyard." The betrayer's body trembled, a faint crack running down the side of his armor. "I waited because I believed there was still something worth saving." "Then help me," Frodo said. "Not with power. Not with fear. Help me let go." The dead began to sink, one by one, fading back into the marsh. The lights above the water dimmed. The mist started to pull away like morning fog before the sun. And for the first time, the betrayer's glowing eyes dimmed too. He stepped back, as if some invisible chain had finally broken. "I thought I was the last," he whispered. "You were just the first to fall," Frodo replied. A silence followed. Then, without a word, the betrayer turned and walked into the mist. This time, he didn't vanish like before. This time, he faded slowly, as though finally being allowed to rest. Gollum was curled near the stones, sobbing softly, whispering words no one could understand. Frodo turned to Sam. "We have to go, before the ring tries again." Sam nodded. "Let's get to Mordor. Let's finish this." They turned toward the narrow path ahead, where the marsh thinned and solid ground began to return. Their feet felt lighter, the air less suffocating. They didn't look back. But just before the fog fully lifted, Frodo glanced over his shoulder one last time. And that's when he saw it. A shadow in the distance.
Small.
Barefoot. Moving. Not toward them. Following them. It looked just like a hobbit. Only it wasn't. And Frodo suddenly realized. The ring might have lost this battle. But it wasn't done fighting yet. Frodo didn't say anything as he turned away from that final glimpse of the shadow. Whatever it was, spirit, echo, or illusion, it didn't matter now. The ring was still with him, and it would keep testing him. Maybe not with battles or monsters, but with whispers, with memories, with regrets that didn't even belong to him. He knew now that carrying the ring meant carrying the weight of every soul it had ever touched. The men who wore it, the elves who fought it, the hobbit who died in silence out in that swamp. Every one of them had left a mark, and the ring remembered them all. Sam stayed close beside him as they walked, checking over his shoulder every now and then. They both felt it, something lingering. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Frodo didn't feel crushed by the burden. Tired, yes, but not broken. The dead marshes slowly gave way to cracked earth and scattered brush. The sound of water faded behind them. Even Gollum, who had followed them in silence since the betrayer disappeared, now walked like a creature deflated. Not snarling or scheming, just quiet. "You all right, Mr. Frodo?" Sam finally asked. Frodo nodded after a long pause. "I think I am. For now." They didn't talk much after that. Words didn't seem to carry the same weight anymore, not after what they'd just seen. The world felt heavier somehow, like the past had layered itself on their shoulders. But strangely, it also felt clearer. Frodo had seen what failure looked like, not just in stories, but in the eyes of someone who had lived with it for ages. The betrayer wasn't a monster. He was a warning, a reflection of what the ring could make anyone become if they believed they were strong enough to control it. As the land dried out, Gollum stopped once, crouched by a rock, and looked up at Frodo. "You saw it too, didn't you?" he said in a hoarse voice. "What we were, what we could have been." Frodo didn't answer right away. "I saw someone who wanted to do the right thing, and didn't." Gollum nodded slowly. "That's all it ever takes. Just once. One wrong step, and then it's gone." Frodo looked at him differently now. Not with pity. Not with hate. Just understanding. Gollum had been twisted by the ring for so long that even the truth had bent in his mind. But he wasn't beyond feeling. The Dead Marshes had shown all of them something real, something none of them could unsee. They stopped for the night under a jagged outcrop, far from the water. Sam made a small fire, carefully shielding the smoke. Gollum stayed on the edge of the light, not touching the food, muttering about shadows and eyes in the fog. Frodo sat quietly, the ring resting cold against his chest. He hadn't touched it since the marsh, and he didn't plan to again until he had to. As Sam dozed off beside the fading fire, Frodo looked up at the stars breaking through the clouds. It was the first time he'd seen them in days. Clear, untouched by fog or ghostly light. They reminded him of home, the Shire, Bag End, soft grass, open skies. He missed it more than he could say. But the journey wasn't over yet. A question came to him then, not about power or destiny, but about cost. How many had been broken before they reached this far? How many had died believing they were strong enough? And what would it take to succeed where they failed? As the night stretched on, he thought again of the hobbit whose body now slept forever in the marsh. What had his name been? Where had he come from? Had he also believed the ring could be mastered, or had he simply been another victim of its draw? Maybe no one would ever know, but Frodo would remember him. He would carry the memory with him, not as a warning to fear, but as a reason to finish what he'd started. The next morning, they rose with the pale dawn and continued their journey. The road to Mordor still lay ahead, hard and cruel, but now they walked it with deeper purpose. The weight of the ring hadn't lessened, but something inside Frodo had changed. He'd faced the worst parts of himself, mirrored in ancient eyes and lifeless hands, and he hadn't given in.
Not yet.
Sam hummed quietly as they walked, trying to lift the silence. Gollum kept to the shadows, his steps twitchy and restless. But they moved forward, one step at a time. As the marshes faded into the distance behind them, Frodo turned one last time and looked back. No lights, no ghosts, just stillness. Whatever had lingered there, it had let them go.
The past couldn't be changed.
But the future still could. And though the ring would fight harder now than ever before, Frodo knew one thing with absolute clarity. He would not let it win. Not for the fallen elves. Not for the forgotten hobbit. Not for the dead who still whispered beneath the water. He would carry them all in silence until the fire took the ring at last. And as they disappeared into the shadows of Mordor's border, the marsh returned to silence. Waiting. Watching. But no longer holding them prisoner. The dead had seen enough. Now it was time for the living to finish what they had started.